I've told this story maybe 4 times in my life. Once to my wife, who didn't believe me until she saw the scar. Once to a kid at a VA meeting who needed to hear that somebody made it out. And the rest of the time I keep it locked up, because some things feel cheaper the more you say them out loud. But you should know about her. People should know. We called her Quill, not because of anything dramatic. There was a feather stuck in the band of her boonie hat when she showed up at the compound, this little gray-brown thing, and somebody asked if it was a good luck charm, and she just looked at him. Didn't smile, didn't nod, just looked. And the name stuck the way names stick out there fast and for no real reason. Her real name was Lena. I didn't learn that for almost 3 weeks. She couldn't talk. Not wouldn't, couldn't. Something with her vocal cords, an injury from before she ever came to us, and nobody knew the full story, and she sure wasn't going to spell it out. She had a little notebook on a cord around her neck and a stub of pencil, and when she absolutely had to say something, she'd write it. 3 words, 4 words, never more than she needed. The thing you have to understand is that men like us, and I'll own it, I was one of them, we run our mouths. That's part of the job nobody tells you about. The fear sits in your chest like a wet sandbag, and the only way to lighten it is to talk. Crude jokes, trash talk. Somebody's mom, somebody's ex, somebody's terrible cooking. Noise is how we breathe. So when a woman walked into our world who made 0 noise at all, it broke something in the room. I remember the first morning. We were at a forward spot out past anything you'd find on a tourist map, the kind of place where the air tastes like dust and old metal, and the heat comes down on you like a hand pressing the back of your neck. There was a chow tent, a couple of plywood huts, sandbags stacked higher than a man. The mountains sat all around us, gray going to purple in the early light, beautiful in a way that made your stomach drop, because beautiful country out there usually means good ground for somebody who wants you dead. Our platoon chief, a guy named Doyle, brought her in and said, "This is your attached shooter. She's the best I've ever seen. Treat her right." And then Doyle left, because Doyle had about 9 other fires to put out, and that's how it goes. He drops a person in your lap and trusts you to be decent. We were not, at first, decent. Ray's started it. Ray's always started it. He was a good operator and a worse human being, the funniest man I ever served with and the first one I'd have left behind if it came to it. He looked Quill up and down, slow, the way you'd look at a vehicle you weren't sure you wanted to buy. "You talk," he said. She looked at him. I said, "Do you talk?" She reached for the notebook, wrote something, turned it around. It said no. Ray's laughed. A few of the other guys laughed because Ray's laughed. "Oh, this is gonna be great," he said. "We got the world's best sniper and she can't even call her own shots. She can't even say enemy left. Hey, can you whistle? You wanna do like bird calls." She put the notebook back against her chest. She didn't write anything else. She just held his eyes until he stopped grinning, and there was something in her face that wasn't anger exactly. It was patience. The kind of patience that scares you a little if you're paying attention. Ray's wasn't paying attention. I'm not proud that I laughed too. I want that on the record, I laughed. Over the next few days, the jokes kept coming, and they got worse the way things always get worse when nobody puts a hand on them. The guys would talk over her. They'd ask her questions and then answer for her in stupid high voices. One of them, a younger kid named Pratt, actually said, loud in the chow tent, "What's she even good for if she can't communicate? In a firefight you need comms. You need voice. She's gonna get somebody killed." She was sitting 10 feet away. She heard all of it. She set down her fork. She picked up the notebook, and she wrote one line, and she walked over and set it on the table in front of Pratt, and then she walked out. It said, "I'll talk when it matters." Pratt read it, laughed, crumpled it up. But I saw him glance at the doorway after she was gone, and I think even then, somewhere under all that bravado, a quieter part of him wasn't laughing. I want to tell you about her work, though, because the talking or the not talking was never the point. The point was her eyes. I've been around shooters my whole career. Good ones, great ones, a couple who were genuinely frightening with a rifle in their hands. And I have never, before or since, seen anyone read the world the way Lena read it. We'd be sitting in a hide hours into a nothing afternoon and she'd suddenly go still. Stiller than she already was, which is saying something. And she'd point. Just 2 fingers low, slow. And out there where I saw nothing but rock and scrub and shimmer, there'd be a man. Or the shape of a man. Or, and this is the part that took me a while to understand, there'd be the afterpicture of a man. The place where a shadow had moved wrong. A puff of dust that didn't match the wind. A bird that took off for no reason a person could see. She read the air. That's the only way I know how to say it. She read what the bullets and the bodies left behind in the air. The first time I really got it was on a range day. We had a beat-up old steel target way out, 900 meters, and the wind was doing that nasty thing where it's calm at your feet and a river up high. Reyes was shooting, missing, cursing. He kept walking his rounds left, right, left, chasing it. Lena watched. After his 4th miss, she touched his shoulder. He flinched like she'd burned him. She held up the notebook. It said, "Watch the trail, not the target." "The what?" Reyes said. She tapped it, "Watch the trail." He didn't get it. I didn't either then. She took the rifle, asked with her eyebrows, and Reyes, mostly to humor her, let her, and she settled in behind it, and she did this thing where she didn't seem to aim at the steel at all. She seemed to aim at the empty space to the side of it. And she fired, and there was that long, awful pause where the round is in the air, that 1.5 that feels like an hour, and then clang. Dead center. She did it again. Clang, and again. Clang. 5 rounds, 5 hits, and the whole time she wasn't looking at the target. She was looking just above and ahead of the bullet, at this faint shiver in the air I could barely make out, this thin distortion like heat off a road. The vapor. The disturbance the round dragged behind it as it tore through the heat. She could see where her shots were going while they were still going. She could correct in real time in her head. Faster than any spotter could read it back. She didn't need a voice to call the wind because she could see the wind on the bullet itself. When she was done, she handed Reyes back his rifle and wrote one more line. "The bullet tells you everything. You just have to listen with your eyes." Reyes read it twice. He didn't laugh that time. He didn't say anything at all, which for Reyes was practically a religious experience. But here's the truth, and I have to be honest because she deserves honesty. It didn't fix things. One good range day doesn't undo 2 weeks of being treated like a problem. The jokes died down a little, but the doubt stayed. Pratt still muttered. A couple of the guys still talked over her. There was this low, ugly current of "we're carrying her," and everybody felt it, and nobody said it out loud except in the way they'd look at each other when she pointed at empty desert and said, with 2 fingers there. She knew, of course she knew. You don't get to be that quiet without learning to read a room as well as you read a battlefield. She knew exactly what every one of us thought of her. She just kept her notebook against her chest and waited. She'd told us, hadn't she, "I'll talk when it matters." None of us understood yet what that was going to cost. It mattered on a Thursday. I remember it was a Thursday because Reyes had been complaining all morning that he was missing some football thing back home, and somebody said it was Thursday, and somebody else said no, it's Wednesday, and they argued about it like it was the most important thing in the world. That's the part nobody puts in the movies. How dumb and small everything is right up until the second it isn't. We had a movement that day, a patrol up into a valley to check on a village that had gone quiet on the radio. Routine on paper, 11 of us plus Lena. Doyle wasn't with us, he was back at the compound, so the senior man on the ground was a chief named Tomlin, solid guy, careful, the kind who counted his people twice. I like Tomlin. He's part of why I'm here to tell you this. The valley was a long throat of land between 2 ridges, steep walls, loose rock, a dry creek bed running up the middle that gave us a path but also gave us nowhere to hide. You learn to hate terrain like that. It funnels you. It tells you exactly where you have to walk, which means it tells anyone watching exactly where you'll be. Lena hated it more than any of us. I could tell. She kept stopping. Not lagging, stopping, deliberate, scanning the high ground with this slow sweep of her head left to right and back. Twice she touched Tomlin's arm and pointed up at the ridgeline at nothing I could see, just rock and a hard blue sky. Both times Tomlin looked, saw nothing, and we kept moving. He wasn't ignoring her. There was just nothing there to ignore. The third time she stopped, she didn't touch his arm. She grabbed it, hard. And she had the notebook out already, and she shoved it at him, and her hand was shaking, which I had never once seen. It said there above US, both SIDES, don't go past the bend. Tomlin looked at it, looked up. There was a bend in the creek bed maybe 60 meters ahead where the walls pinched in tight. Past it the valley opened into a wider bowl, open ground, a killing floor if you wanted to call it what it was. How do you know? Tomlin said, not unkind, just asking. A man trying to make a decision with 11 lives in his hands and nothing to go on but a mute woman's shaking hand and a feather in her hat. She pointed up and to the right, then up and to the left. Then she wrote fast, the pencil tearing the paper a little. The birds, no birds, someone's up there. And I swear to you, in that moment the whole valley was silent. No birds, I hadn't noticed. Why would I notice the absence of a sound? But she'd noticed. Of course she had. She lived her whole life in the spaces where sound should be. Tomlin made the call. Good chief. He raised a fist. Hold. And for 1 second, one single second, every one of us stopped. And I think if that second had lasted, we'd have all walked out of that valley fine, and I'd be telling you a much shorter story. But Pratt. Pratt. He was on point, out front, closest to the bend. And Pratt had spent 2 weeks deciding this woman was a liability, and some part of him couldn't stand to let her be right. He took 2 more steps, just 2, toward the open ground, looking back over his shoulder at us like, see nothing, she's jumping at. The first shot took him in the shoulder and spun him into the rocks. Then the whole world came apart. I can't really describe a proper ambush to someone who hasn't been in one. People think it's loud, and it is, but that's not the thing. The thing is that it's everywhere at once. The air itself turns solid, rounds coming down off both ridges, cracking past your head, kicking up dirt that stings your face, ricocheting off stone with this awful whine. You can't tell where it's coming from because it's coming from everywhere. Your brain just stops. It white screens. You drop and you make yourself small, and you wait for your training to come back online. And the half second before it does is the loneliest moment a human being can have. We were caught in the worst possible place. The pinch before the bend, walls too steep to climb, no cover but a few low rocks in the lip of the creek bed. They had us from above on both sides. They'd said it perfectly. They'd been waiting, and they'd let us walk in, and the only reason we weren't all already dead was that Pratt's 2 stupid steps had sprung the trap 30 seconds early, before we were fully in the bowl. 2 stupid steps. He probably saved us by being too proud to listen. I've never figured out how to feel about that. Tomlin was screaming for returns of fire, screaming for everyone to find cover, and we were trying, but here's the problem. We couldn't see them. They were up high, dug into the rocks, muzzle flashes lost in the glare and the shadow. We were shooting at ridgelines, shooting at maybe, burning ammo at ghosts, and every few seconds another one of us got hit. A guy named Okafor took a round through the calf. Ray's caught a graze across the scalp that put so much blood in his eyes he couldn't see. We were dying in pieces, and we couldn't even find the people doing it. And then I saw Lena. She was flat behind the lip of the creek bed, the only one of us not panicking, and she had her rifle out, and she was doing that thing, that stillness, the whole valley exploding around her, and she was as calm as a held breath. She wasn't looking at the ridgelines like the rest of us. She was looking at the air, at the dust, at the little splashes of grit where rounds were striking near us. She was reading the trails. Every shot they fired came in along a line, and a bullet coming through that heat and that dust leaves a track, a faint disturbance, a thread of motion. The splash where it lands and the path it took to get there. To me, it was chaos. To her, it was a map. She was sitting in the middle of a storm of gunfire and she was tracing every single round backward up the line to the hand that fired it. She rolled toward Tomlin, got the notebook out, and she didn't have time to write a sentence, so she wrote one word and jabbed her finger at the right-hand ridge. 3. 3 shooters right side, then she jabbed left. 2. Then she did the thing that I will see behind my eyes until the day I die. She couldn't call targets with her voice. She couldn't say enemy 2 o'clock high behind the gray rock. She had no comms anyone could hear over that noise, so she made her own. She started shooting, and after every shot she'd point, fast, 2 fingers a hard line in the air there. And the rest of us, the ones who could still fight, we figured it out in about 4 seconds flat, the way you figure things out when your life depends on it. Her shots were the call. Where she fired, we fired. She was painting the targets for us with her own rounds, marking each position the instant before we lit it up. Crack, point, and 3 of us pour fire into the spot on the right ridge, and a shape that had been a muzzle flash a second ago goes quiet. Crack, point, and the volume coming off the left side drops by a third. She couldn't say a word, but she was talking. She was running the whole fight, calling every shot, commanding 11 men, and she was doing it without making a single sound any of us could hear. The bullets were her voice. The trails were her language. And for the first time since she'd walked into our lives, every single one of us was listening. I remember looking over at Pratt. He dragged himself behind a rock, holding his shoulder, white as a sheet, and he was watching her with his mouth open. The man who'd said she'd get us killed, watching her save every life in that valley, one impossible shot at a time. It wasn't over, though, not even close, because reading the trails kept her head up, kept her exposed. To find their shots, she had to put herself in the open more than any of us, and they figured out fast that the little woman behind the creek lip was the one tearing them apart. They turned on her. The fire shifted. Rounds started walking toward her position, closer and closer, kicking grit into her face, and she didn't move. She couldn't move. If she dropped, we went blind again. She just kept reading, kept shooting, kept pointing. And then a round caught her. I saw her jerk, saw the rifle dip. There was blood, a lot of it, low on her side, and for one horrible second she folded over the weapon, and I thought that was it. I thought we'd lost her and ourselves both. But she didn't go down. She got back on the gun. I have thought about that moment more than any other moment of my life. A bullet in her side, the kind of wound that puts most men flat on their backs praying, and Lena Quill got back behind that rifle with her teeth clenched and one hand pressed to the hole in her, and she found the air again. She found the trails, and she kept calling the fight. You have to understand what it took. The pain alone would have ended most people, but it wasn't just pain. To read a bullet's trail, you have to be calm. You have to slow your breathing, slow your heart, slow the whole machine of yourself down until you can see the tiny things, the shiver in the heat, the thread of disturbed air, the splash of a strike. Panic blinds you. Pain is panic's twin. And she was sitting there gut shot in the middle of the loudest, most terrifying thing a human being can experience, and she made herself calm. She made herself still. Out of pure will she became quiet on the inside the same way she was quiet on the outside, and in that quiet she could see what none of us could. Crack point. Crack point. One by one she took them apart. The 3 on the right went silent, then 2 of the left. There was one shooter left, dug in deep on the high left side, smart, only firing in short bursts and ducking back, never showing himself long enough for any of us to range him. Lena watched the empty rock where he'd been. She waited. She didn't shoot at where he was. She waited for where he'd be. I watched her track something I could not see, a memory of a trail, the line his last round had taken, projected backward and held in her mind. She shifted her aim a hand's width to the side of the rock, into open stone, into nothing. And she fired into the nothing. A half-second later, the last shooter leaned out to take his shot, leaned out exactly into the space she'd already sent her bullet toward, and her round was there waiting for him. Then it was quiet, really quiet, the kind of quiet after gunfire that rings in your ears like a struck bell, smoke and dust hanging in the air, somebody groaning, somebody calling out names, counting heads. Tomlin's voice, hoarse, talk to me, who's hit? We were all hit one way or another. Akafar's leg, Ray's bleeding from his scalp, Pratt's shoulder, a dozen smaller wounds, but we were alive. 11 men walked into that valley, and 11 men were going to walk or be carried out of it. In an ambush like that, set that well, on ground that bad, that doesn't happen. That is not supposed to happen. By every rule of how these things go, we should have been a story they told at other people's funerals. And the only reason we weren't was lying behind the creek lip with a hole in her side, and she was fatting. I got to her first. I'm glad it was me. I got my hands on the wound, and Ray's came skidding down beside me, blood still running into one eye, and he was saying her name, her call sign, over and over. Quill, Quill, stay with me, stay with me. And his voice was cracking, this man who 2 weeks ago had asked if she could do bird calls. She was looking up at the sky, that hard blue sky, and she was so calm. She'd been calm the whole time, and she was calm now, and that scared me more than anything, because calm like that can mean a person has already started letting go. She lifted her hand, reached for the notebook. Her fingers were slick with her own blood, and she could barely hold the pencil, and Ray's said, No, you don't gotta write nothing, save it. But she shook her head just slightly, and she wrote. It took her a long time. Longer than any line she'd ever written. We just waited. The whole platoon, those who could move, gathering around, and not one of us said a word, because for the first time we understood that her silence was worth more than all our noise put together, and the least we could do was give her some of it back. She turned the notebook around. It said, told you, I'd talk when it mattered. And then, and I'd swear this on anything you put in front of me, she smiled. The only time I ever saw her smile, just a small one. A little crooked, proud almost. The smile of a person who'd been doubted her whole life and had finally, on her own terms, in her own silent language, said everything she needed to say. I want to tell you she died there because that's how these stories usually go, and it would make a cleaner ending. But she didn't. We got the bird in. We packed that wound, and we kept pressure, and 4 of us carried her out of that valley on a litter we made of 2 rifles and a poncho, and Ray's ran the whole way alongside, holding her hand, talking enough for both of them, telling her about the football game he was going to miss, telling her she owed him a rematch on the range, telling her anything, everything, just to keep her here. She lived. She made it to surgery. She kept her life, and most of her side, and all of her dignity, which she'd never lost in the first place. She didn't come back to the platoon. The wound took her out of the field for good. I saw her exactly once more, months later, stateside, at a ceremony where they pinned something on her chest that she clearly didn't care about. She still had the notebook on its cord. Some habits you keep. After it was over, I went up to her, and I didn't know what to say, and I'm a man who's never been short on words, but I stood there like an idiot. She watched me struggle. Then she pulled out the notebook, wrote something, and handed it to me with that same small, crooked smile. It said, you talk too much, but you're okay. I still have that page. It's in a frame in my hallway, and my kids walk past it every single day, and they have no idea. Someday I'll tell them. Someday they'll need to hear that the loudest person in the room is almost never the one you should be listening to. Here's the thing I keep coming back to. We spent 2 weeks mocking a woman because she couldn't make noise. 2 weeks deciding she was useless because she didn't speak our language, all that trash talk, all that fear dressed up as toughness, all that noise. And the whole time she was the only one in that platoon who actually knew how to listen. To the wind, to the birds that weren't singing, to the bullets writing their paths across the sky. She listened to a language none of us even knew was being spoken. And when the moment came, she read it out loud in the only voice she had, and she saved every single one of us with it. People always ask me what made her so good. The eyes they figure, the training, the freak natural talent for reading those trails. But I don't think that was it, not really. I think when you spend your whole life unable to speak, you learn to hear everything else. Every small thing the rest of us talk right over. And out there in that valley, in the loudest moment of our lives, the quietest person was the only one who heard the truth in time. She couldn't speak. She didn't have to. She just waited for the one moment it mattered, and then she said everything.